So I'm going to be vulnerable and be honest. And these are realizations that I've had over the last year or more in my life, breaking down where I came from and how I fit into this world. And it's my story. I take it how you will. I just have this pressure to let it go, and this is an outlet for that to happen. And maybe it helps somebody, maybe it doesn't. I'm just here to release and put that energy out into the world that I do hope it helps someone. Uh, Maybe still struggling with their own interpretations of how their past was for them. That not all bad things are bad. They're part of your journey. They are the catalyst, the thing that pushes you forward through through the looking glass, I should say, or the doorway, whatever you want to call it. So, as a young kid, I was heavily introduced to drugs and alcohol, and it was a way of life. It wasn't oh, well, this is fun, this is cool. At first, it may have been like I get to be like everybody else, but my dad and my uncle and my aunt, my family was just very heavily into any drug source or alcohol or just soothing mechanisms for themselves. And it took a long time to realize why they did what they did, and the hurt and the pain that they went through. The the moment it came bad for me was I would smoke weed with my dad and my aunt and my uncle, and I would drink with my uncle. We'd listen to heavy metal music, and I thought that was the coolest thing ever. I got to be one of the guys. I got to feel like I was with other people and being a part of something. And so this would set up a long term idea that I had to do these things to be around people because I never felt the same as everybody else. I always felt like an outsider. I always felt like I didn't belong. And it comes from, my mom wasn't around. I was taken, my dad took me away, and and we'd move around a lot, and it was kind of chaotic as a kid. And so I felt the pain, but I didn't understand why I was feeling the pain. I didn't have the tools to release those things as a kid, and it led down a path of 8, 9, 10 years old. I'm drinking, smoking weed, snorting pills, crushing up Lortabs, and trading things to friends to get them, and just trying to feel something other than hurting. Little did I know that little me was, I thought I was the biggest thing in the world. I thought I could handle anything. I could take on anything. And the world would show me that that may be the case, but not in the way you think. And so at 11, 12 years old was a big catalyst for me. It was a push from the universe in that way, that I would I would be snorting pills and taking pills and doing these drugs, but I had gotten to such a dark place in my own mind of how I looked at myself and how I felt, and I didn't understand anything, and I was just trying to cut it all off. And I woke up one day and I can almost feel that energy that I had, and I remember small parts. The day itself wasn't necessarily important to the situation. I had been plotting all day that I was going to get really messed up. I was going to get tore up on pills, my uncle's pills. He had them in a drawer easily for me to get to. I always knew they were there. I had, taken some of these, one maybe, and here or there, not much. I didn't really mess with them. I more or less did pills with my dad. He would crush them up and we'd snort them through a dollar bill or a straw or whatever it was. And so this was kind of my leap. This was my chance to just do it on my own. I wanted to not feel, but feel. And so I decided I'm gonna just go through and take a couple, see how I feel. Little did I know that these were all heavy psychological drugs. These were all drugs made for given to my uncle for whatever reasons, and he struggled with a lot of demons in his own life, dark things about himself, and he didn't understand how to work through his own feelings, and he outsourced that to medications. And not blaming him, not judging him. He was his own person, and he tried his best. But they were there. They were accessible to me, and I didn't fully understand the capabilities that these things had. And so I took a couple. Started to feel a little way. I don't know if all of them were meant for one thing or another. I just knew they had colors on them. Some were pink and black, some were white, some were whatever color. So I'd take a couple, and I didn't get the feeling that I wanted to feel. So I would decide to take a couple more. And I remember I started around, not nighttime, but like right as night was coming in, the sun was setting, everybody was winding down for the day, so I knew I could get left alone. My grandma wouldn't come upstairs to mess with us. She wouldn't talk to us. We could stay upstairs and do our thing, and no one would bother us. And my cousins were around, but they didn't fully know what was happening just yet. They were bystanders in the situation. They didn't do anything like that. They didn't have the same situations. They didn't do drugs. They didn't understand that. They didn't drink alcohol. I was the scapegoat for that. My family, felt it was okay to allow me to take on that. And I was, now in hindsight, I was stronger in that sense. I could take that, and that was the way that I would learn. That was the way that I would grow, because I was looking at these people as my guidance system. Like, I didn't have a healthy family structure to hold on to. It was all whatever this was. So they weren't taking anything, but they knew. They realized at one point, like, he's done. I'm like slurring my words, and walking around doing random things and kind of zoned out, and I'm still just taking. Like, every time I'd feel the urge to just take something, I would. And then there was a point where I couldn't do it anymore. I was like, this is, I can't even function anymore. And as small as I was, I had this realization that I done went too far. Like, I pushed it past that boundary, and now I'm kind of at the will of whatever's happening. I could smoke weed and I'd just fall asleep. If I could snort a Lortab and I would feel relaxed and whatever. But these pills were designed to mess with the mind. And they were gonna make me feel something, that's for sure. So, one of the last things I really remember from this scenario prior to passing out was I went outside and I'm telling my cousins, I'm like, don't say anything. If you say anything, I'm gonna hurt you. And I don't want to get in trouble. I was doing anything I could, and I knew they knew and that they cared and they really were worried. And because they had seen this before, they seen it with their own mom, they seen it with mainly their mom. Like their mom was my aunt, and she would walk around the house zombified, just completely zoned out. No, nothing mattered to her. She would get food and lay in bed, ice cream, lay in bed, smoking her cigarettes, burning herself, spilling ice cream all over the place, and just passing out. That was her existence. And for that period of time, and I remember seeing that myself, and now I knew what it felt like, and it wasn't good. But they were concerned, and they cared. We fought. We had our problems, but they cared. And I was outside getting some air, telling them these things. They were following me. They followed me upstairs into the house, and I'm hiding away from my grandma, not trying to do or say anything. And I get up to the bed, and I lay down in this bunk bed, and I just pass out. Didn't know if I was ever going to wake up again. I woke up, and I woke up at the emergency room with a tube down my nose, in my neck, in my throat. I can't really remember. I knew it was like I was so gone. I think it was down my nose. Anyway, I can't be sure. Irrelevant. And I was glimpsing consciousness on and off, and the nurse came in to check on me, and I'm like, can you get this out of my nose? Like, and I got an IV, and that kind of freaked me out a little bit, but like, I'm like, can you get this out of my nose? Like, I need that. And she came in, she pulled it out, and I kind of remember that weird feeling of it getting pulled out, but then I passed back out. And I woke up later, and I remember that feeling of guilt. Like I felt like I just did something so wrong. And it wasn't to anybody else, but I was worried about everybody else. I was worried about how I made everyone else feel. And the nurses came in, they're asking me if I want Sprite and Jello and all these, or they just want anything. And I'm like, those two things stuck out to me. So for like the next 3 days, I'm like, Sprite and Jello, bring them to me, give it to me. I probably ate and drank them out of Sprite and Jello. And I remember how sweet they were. They were very sweet people. They weren't there to judge me. They weren't there to make me feel bad. They were there to help me. They were there to make me feel like I was wanted. And that was one of the first times I'd ever really gotten to feel that, especially from a woman figure in my life. My grandma cared and loved us, but she wasn't that figure. She would kind of switch up depending on her moods and her emotions and all those things. But like, what I needed in this moment was that vision. Like, these people cared. They didn't know me. They didn't understand why I did what I did, but they cared. And so they brought me like a gift basket. I had a yo-yo, I had coloring books, I had a few little fun things to play with because I was going to be there for a couple of days while they checked up on me and made sure it was okay. And I processed what was going through my body, and they had pumped me out with that charcoal stuff so that I could dump all that out without any more going into my system. And it was a tough situation to then talk to my family, because I don't remember really talking to them much. I knew my dad was in the hospital with me. He had he would have heart issues, and he would go to the hospital, get his Lortabs, and go home. And like that was his thing. Like he would just periodically pop to the hospital, get his medicines, and then leave. But he was there with me. I didn't get to see him. I didn't get to talk to him. I pretty much spent these like few days alone with these women that were there. They would switch out. They'd help me. They'd be there, and I was bored. I was getting restless. I'm like trying to talk to everybody and having a blast at this point because I'm kind of just like going back to who I was. And it was hard because like people would start explaining to me what was happening, and like my grandma was telling me, oh, well, they only found 2 pills in your system, like it couldn't have been that much. And um, my dad, I can tell he was upset when I did end up talking to him and like not understanding why. And I know I was almost dead. I know that how much I took. I know that how it made me feel, and to the point that I lost complete consciousness. And the fact that I hid it for hours before anybody ever even got to me. So, like, even if they did find 2 pills in my system, that was because the others had already began to dissolved in my system. I'd then been hiding it for hours, way before they took me late into the night. Um, but there was when I can say there was like a lifting of this dark feeling, and I felt great. I felt good. I felt like I was a new person, and I didn't know yet that everything hadn't finished. I thought I was gonna get to go home, and I was excited for Halloween. It was coming up soon. I would get a big bag of candy, and I would just eat candy. I wouldn't even eat any food, nothing. I would just eat that candy. But little did I know I was going to go through a whole nother scenario. So it comes to the day that I'm about to get out, and I'm thinking they're gonna come pick me up and take me home. And instead, I was gonna go 2 hours away to a different location. And I get there, not really knowing what it is or expecting. Nobody's telling me anything. I just feel this, you know, sense of a new self, but I did feel the guilt. I did feel like I let people down, and not really knowing I let myself down in that moment. And I didn't know how to forgive myself in that situation. So I got to this facility, and we go up this elevator, and we get to the top floor. They had to use a key to get into the elevator and like use the elevator. And I'm like, what is that? And I was a little concerned, and I get in there, and there's a bunch of kids running around, and I'm like, okay, what is this? And it's, I'm thinking it's just a place I need to stay so they can watch me or whatever. And it was, but it was also a facility for kids that were just people didn't know how to handle, I guess, and like kids that set fires and um, maybe stabbed somebody or whatever. They were just ones that people couldn't handle. And as I was introduced to these kids, and everybody's all happy to see me, and I'm like, okay, this is weird, but okay, I'll bite. They show me my room, and I get in there, and I see that the windows are caged up. So now I can't get out because the elevator is key locked. The windows are caged. I'm now a caged animal. I just come from a scenario where I know I should have died, and now I'm in a cage, and I don't understand any of it. I'm just going going with the flow, but still feeling hurt, still feeling sad inside. And so I stayed there for like 2 weeks. I made friends with people. I had my moments of just complete frustration. I was a caged animal. I would lose my mind, and dark parts of me would show up. But I would feel bad for it. Like I would do something, I'd freak out, and then I know these people didn't do anything to me. They're just there, the workers, and they'd put me in the padded room with rainbows and shit all over the walls. And I remember it was getting close to Halloween, really close. Like it was like a week away or something. And I got to that point where I'm like, I'm okay. Just let me go. I want to do this. This is the only thing I want to do. This is what I've been looking forward to. I had a costume. I don't even know what I went as, honestly, but I had a costume. It was probably Batman or something. And I wanted to see my friends again and hang out and smoke some more weed and get back to my life that I had before, where I was kind of left alone by everybody and I could just wander the streets of the city, the town that I lived in. About a mile and a half long town. It wasn't big. It was like everybody knew each other, but I ran around all over the place and I enjoyed myself. But I wasn't able to do that, so I wanted to get back to that. And they ended up bending. I don't think they really, like, they had counseling and they tried to talk to me, but I don't think they really had the tools to understand what I was going through, because they didn't understand where I was coming from. Being 11 or 12, people don't expect you to be as hurt as you are. They don't expect you to have as much weighing you down as that situation. And I don't blame them for that. A college degree isn't going to give you the ability to speak to a child that has been tormented, has been hurt by the people around them, has been left to his own devices and completely ignored in some cases. And just trying to find some kind of role model and some kind of feeling, some kind of love. And so I get out and I get out for Halloween, and it was a couple of days before Halloween, but I was so happy. I was ready to go. I'm like, I'm gonna go hit the town. I'm gonna go hang out with my friends. So I get home and I almost immediately go to find some friends. I'm like, I'm gonna go hang out with my buddy Cody or Derek if I can find any of them out and about. And so I go down the street, 10, 15 minutes away from where I lived, and no one was home. No one was out, no one was playing. It was like the world was dead. There really wasn't even that many people driving. And it was getting dark, and I was decided, I don't know how I got a couple dollars, but I got a couple dollars, and I was like, I'm gonna go to the gas station. I'm gonna do my ritual. I get a slushie and a granola bar. I love that. And I don't think I got the slushie. I'm pretty sure I only got the granola bar. It was a Hidden Valley honey granola bar. The real crunchy, hard kind. And I'm eating that, and I crossed the street from the gas station to go to this bank, and it was directly across the street. I'm going back to my house, and I remember looking to my left, and there was a black truck, big bright lights on the front of it. It's like stopped at the stop sign, and I felt darkness. It was like insidious feeling, and I can't. I wish I could paint it. I wish I could like explain it better, but I knew that there was something weird about this truck. So he slowly starts driving, and I'm paying attention now. And he takes a left on the road that I'm on, and we're both going parallel with each other. And I'm immediately like, fight or flight, fight or flight, fight or flight. And the only option I had was flight. I mean, I'm a kid. I'm not going to fight a full grown man. I know that. And so I walk forward up to this bank, and it was an ATM parking lot section. And there was a fence that had an exit and an entrance, and they were separated by like 20, 30 yards. And so I walk as if I'm not going to go into this bank, and I walk like maybe 5 feet, and this truck's pulling up behind me, slowing down, and he gets to that point where he's past that exit or entrance or whatever it was, and I double back. I go into the parking lot. I'm like, okay, I'm in the light. There's cameras. Like, this is the best moment for me right now in this tiny moment. But I'm not done. And now it's time to see what he does. Sure enough, speeds up, goes into the parking lot, comes trying to come around to me. No windows rolled down, no saying, hey, hey, Denny, how are you? Not a friendly thing along with the feeling. And so I book it. I book it back to the gas station. I wasn't very far from it, so I'm like scared to death. And I call my family, and couldn't get a hold of anybody for a little while. Thankfully back then it was you remembered phone numbers, and you remembered how to get a hold of somebody. You didn't need a cell phone or a phone book or any of that. You could have used a phone book, but I did have my grandma's number. So after not being able to get a hold of my dad or anybody there, I called my grandma, and they didn't. I forgot exactly why they were struggling to find a reason to come get me. I'm like, I need help. Like, there's somebody literally trying to pick me up, and they kind of had a hesitation towards it. And then after pleading with them, like, my uncle broke down and didn't have a license, but drove to come get me from the gas station to take me to my grandma's. And I didn't fully understand that. But it was like this weird processing of like light and dark, good and evil, and like a lot of emotions and a lot of feelings all within like these 2 weeks of, for a little boy, like a 11, 12-year-old kid. And I didn't understand how deep it went until now, how much I know that God, source, whatever you want to call it, plays a role into my life, and that these were all lessons for me to learn from. That for me to get into this dark place that young, and even younger than this, there's stories before this, but this was one of the most impactful ones where I felt I should have been dead. And instead, there was more for me. There was more hurt, but there was also more good as well. It was this toss and turn of good and bad and good and bad and good and bad and good and bad. And I'm like, so I'd spend the next, it's almost close to 20 years trying to understand that for myself. And these little moments that happen that have always stuck with me. The feeling is more important than the event ever was to me, because even now, speaking about it, I feel it. And letting that go. All that to get back to how I felt about myself, and how I felt and cared about other people's feelings in all that. I cared about how my grandparents looked at me, and how these nurses looked at me, and how my dad looked at me. And it was really, really hard to realize that I was putting myself down each and every time, because I wasn't stopping to care about what I thought about me. And I can hold on to those things for the rest of my life if I wanted to, and I can look at them as like, how could I ever have done that? And how could I have ever blame everybody else? How did they let me get to that point? How did they treat me that badly that I wanted to do that in the first place? How come I didn't have anyone there to support me or love me or be anything? And I could look at it that way. But when your goal switches from craving validation to peace, and you aren't looking for the bad guy anymore, and you realize that you're not the bad guy either, because you can go through the cycles of they're the bad guy, I'm the bad guy, they're the bad guy, I'm the bad guy, but you're always trying to find a bad guy or a victim in the situation, and it happened. It's done. That was a version of me. That was a little boy in me that experienced something, that grew from something, that has that knowing that I never want to feel that way again. And I did go through situations later on in life where they were similar but never that bad. But that feeling of guilt would come along with them, and it was something that was hard to let go. It was, and maybe this is part of my process of even letting that go too. I'm not going to sit here and pretend like I know exactly what to say or how to do anything, but this is part of my story, and I hope that someone listening to this can find some relation in there, and I'm just gonna leave it at that. So if you spent 32 minutes sitting here listening to me talk about myself and my past, I appreciate it. Have a great day.